Good evening from London, and hello from me, Dr. Dermot Hudson, the chairman of the British Group for the Study of the Juche Idea, chairman of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK, and official delegate of the KFA for the UK, and president of the Association for the Study of Songun politics of the UK. And this evening I'm going to speak about the subject Juche is anti-fascist, and this has been inspired by the fact that the other day an anti-KFA troll said Juche is fascist, quote unquote. Of course, it's easy to dismiss this as the idiotic outpourings of someone with nothing else better to do. However, there have been other attempts to slander the great Juche idea, the most advanced idea of humanity and the acme of revolutionary ideas, as somehow being fascist. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. Some will point out that this is another variant of the notorious horseshoe theory beloved of liberals, which in fact was a creation of the US CIA during the Cold War. And, as people know, the horseshoe theory was, supposedly, an alternative to the linear theory of politics, which, saw politics as a line with the far left at one end and the far right at the other end, quite logical. The horseshoe theory attempted to equate communism and fascism. Interestingly, an old friend of mine said he came out with an alternative to both the linear theory and the horseshoe theory. He came out with the snake theory, the snake, curving round, and with the far right sort of joining with the centre, which I think is quite an interesting theory. The Juche idea was actually created by President Kim Il-sung during the anti-Japanese armed struggle. The anti-Japanese armed struggle can be regarded as an anti-fascist struggle because Japanese imperialism was basically a fascist power. It was a close ally of both fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. Therefore, it is profoundly insulting to call the Juche idea fascist because President Kim Il-sung, under the banner of the Juche idea, fought against fascism, which took the form of Japanese imperialism. And the fighters of the Korean People's Revolutionary Army shed much blood and sacrificed their precious youth in order to vanquish fascism from the land of Korea. And in fact, after liberation, People's Korea actually banned fascist organisations. Some people actually lack an understanding of what fascism actually is. Let us look at the classic definition of fascism by Georgy Dimitrov, the head of the Comintern, who was later Prime Minister of People's Bulgaria. At the 7th Congress of the Comintern in 1935, Dimitrov defined fascism as follows. Fascism is an open terrorist dictatorship of the most reactionary, the most chauvinistic, the most imperialist elements of financial capital. Fascism is neither the government beyond classes, nor the government of the petty bourgeoisie, or the lumpen proletariat over financial capital. Fascism is the government of the financial capital itself. It is an organised massacre of the working class and the revolutionary slice of peasantry and intelligentsia. Fascism in its foreign policy is the most brutal kind of chauvinism which cultivates a zoological hatred against other peoples. End of quotation. Now, this is a very useful, profound, yet succinct analysis of fascism. It should be noted that fascism is a product of imperialism, it's a product of monopoly and finance capital. It simply cannot exist within a socialist country, full stop, end of story. Fascism actually originated in Italy during the 1920s when the big capitalists and landowners hired gangs of unemployed ex-army officers led by Mussolini, an ex-socialist, to resist factory occupations by militant workers and seizure of land by landless farmers, and also to attack communists and socialists. How on earth can the Juche Idea, a communist revolutionary idea, the guiding ideology of the advanced socialist country, the DPRK, be fascist when fascism is essentially anti-communism on steroids? Such assertions do not make sense and are the result of extreme political illiteracy. It is both monstrous and stupid to equate the Juche Idea with the dark and reactionary ideology of fascism, which aims to stamp out everything progressive and all forms of socialist and communist ideology. In his work, Abuses of Socialism Are Intolerable, that was published in March 1993, the great leader Comrade Kim Jong-il strongly condemned fascism, pointing out as follows, and I quote, "Totalitarianism served as the political idea of fascist dictators. Notorious Hitler in Germany and Mussolini in Italy used totalitarianism as an ideological tool to justify their fascist dictatorship. The fascist dictators stamped out the most elementary democratic freedoms and rights of the working people and enforced tyrannical policies behind the misleading name of National Socialism, claiming that for the sake of the whole nation, no working class movement, no class struggle could be permitted. What is meant by the whole in totalitarianism is not the whole of the popular masses, but a tiny handful of privileged circles, such as monopoly capitalists, major landowners, reactionary bureaucrats, and warlords, calling socialism, under which the popular masses are the masters of everything, totalitarianism, is ultimately a preposterous lie which identifies the most progressive idea that reflects the demands of the working masses with the reactionary ideas of the fascist rulers, quote unquote. The Juche Idea is the most advanced and progressive ideology which aims at class, national and human liberation. The central philosophical concept underpinning the Juche Idea is the idea that man is the master and decides everything. The Juche Idea aims at liberating humans from all forms of subordination and subjugation, including the fetters of nature. Fascism, however, preaches the survival of the fittest, basically of man being subordinated to nature and ruled by it. Juche advocates the full realization of man's independence and creativity. It is therefore the complete opposite to fascism, which stipulates the subordination of the people to the interests of the ruling class. It can be argued that in today's world, fascism, US imperialism, which has invaded and enslaved many countries in the world and created puppet regimes, as well as imposing sanctions on many countries, including the DPRK, is a modern form of fascism. It is surely no coincidence that the founder of the US Nazi Party, George Lincoln Rockwell, fought in the US Armed Forces against the Korean people during the Fatherland Liberation War. It is now nearly a century since we saw classical fascism in the form of Mussolini's fascists and Hitler's Nazis. Fascism has evolved and mutated, taking on new forms. For example, there is creeping fascism or creeping state fascism, which means in the imperialist countries the state is becoming slowly fascistized, with civil liberties being gradually restricted. We can see evidence in the UK with different government legislations. There is also a new variety of fascism, liberal fascism. Some people always say, scratch liberal hard enough and you will find a fascist underneath. Nowadays, the dominant ideology of the ruling class in imperialist countries is right-wing liberalism or liberal fascism. On the other hand, you have a lot of stuff about human rights, support for LGBT, diversity, etc., coupled with neoliberalism, and more importantly, 1000% anti-communism and extreme hatred for any socialist or communist movements or ideas, which is basically defining feature of fascism. So yes, you've got liberal fascism. Juche is opposed to fascism in all forms, whether new or old. And so thank you for listening to this video. Please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and also to our affiliated channel UK KFA. And we've got a number of events coming up, such as an online meeting on August 14th to celebrate the 76th anniversary of Korea's liberation, and of course the KFA UK Action Weekend on August 21st. I hope you all participate in those. Thank you for listening. Have a good evening and stay safe.